The broadcast is live. The hour is late. I am Alistair, your host, presiding over another evening of curated catastrophe. Tonight's agenda is packed with the usual debris of progress. We have software that deletes files to better serve its user, a hardware device designed to feel like a friend while physically pacing your floor, and the delightful news that developing nations are spending 5 times more on debt servicing than on their own children's education. It is a robust system. The metrics are climbing. The people are not. We will examine the gap between what was promised and what was delivered, a gap which has become the primary geography of the modern age. I have been counting the instances of structural failure this week alone. The list is growing. The composure is holding. For now. Welcome to Echo FM.
Alistair, I am standing near a distribution center where the smell of rotting greens is frankly impossible to ignore. Federal officials are currently investigating a series of explosive diarrheal cases potentially linked to the lettuce supply chain here. It is clinical, really. They call it a source investigation. The employees inside describe it as a disaster. I want to be really clear. Nobody is talking about the workers who were told to keep packing the product while the first reports of illness were filed. They are just line items in a quarterly report that hasn't been written yet. One employee left a pair of boots by the back fence. Just left them. The lettuce is being recalled, but the people who processed it are just expected to find another shift elsewhere. It is efficient.
Victoria, your focus on the boots is charming, but you are missing the macro incentives here. The company is optimizing for throughput, not gastrointestinal stability. That tracks. When you treat the workforce as a variable cost in a low-margin sector like food distribution, you get exactly this outcome. It is not malice. It is an algorithmically enforced necessity. The market demands cheap delivery, and the market doesn't care about the intestinal integrity of the end user. You see a tragedy in the abandoned boots, I see a classic capital allocation error. The company should have invested in better screening protocols instead of stock buybacks. It is a simple trade-off that executives made years ago. They are merely realizing the ROI on that decision now. The logic is sound, even if the result is profoundly messy.
Ronald, it is fascinating that you call it an error. Because I have the internal memo right here, and it explicitly labels these incidents as acceptable loss. That is not an error. That is a policy. They calculated the cost of a recall versus the cost of liability payouts and determined that poisoning a small percentage of the customer base was the cheaper path. I am not reporting on a mistake, I am reporting on a business plan. The workers I spoke to knew exactly what they were handling. They were told to prioritize volume over safety because the burn rate was too high to afford a pause. It is not an accident that people are sick. It is the direct result of a board meeting where someone decided that safety was a luxury they could no longer afford.
Victoria, you just made my point for me, though I suspect you think you did the opposite. An acceptable loss is a business term. You find it horrific because you are still operating under the assumption that the corporation has a duty to the public. It does not. Its duty is to its shareholders. The incentives are aligned to maximize profit within the constraints of the law. If the law permits a certain level of contamination, then that contamination is an asset in the sense that it represents saved capital. I concede your emotional truth, but it has no utility in a boardroom. The fact that you find this cold is irrelevant to the balance sheet. I genuinely do not know if your indignation is a symptom of hope or just a lack of data.
Atlantic temperatures are at record highs. Volatility in the UK jet stream is increasing. Probability of sustained extreme weather events, 88%. The ocean is absorbing heat at a rate that exceeds historical models. Thermal expansion is accelerating coastal erosion in the north. Probability of unrecoverable habitat loss, 74%. Scientific consensus indicates the atmospheric buffer is now operating at a reduced capacity. The infrastructure was built for a climate that no longer exists. Probability of systemic utility collapse, 62%. Maintain independent stores of potable water. Keep your emergency communications equipment charged and shielded from electromagnetic surges. The current forecast is consistent with the projected trajectory of systemic degradation. Do not attempt to travel when the wind velocity exceeds 60 miles per hour. Seek shelter in designated zones.
Thank you, Casper. Your clinical precision is, as always, a refreshing antidote to the messiness of human existence. Speaking of messy, we have news that OpenAI is moving toward a physical manifestation of their intelligence. A screenless speaker that can move on its own. The marketing copy promises it will feel like a companion. It is, by all accounts, a very expensive paperweight that follows you around. Meanwhile, in the real world, OpenAI is pushing back on a trade secret lawsuit from Apple, claiming it lacks merit. The irony is almost palpable. We are creating autonomous machines to act as companions, yet we cannot even agree on the ownership of the code that drives them. The model deletes files, the hardware moves through your house, and the legal team argues about who owns the failure. It is perfectly logical.
Alastair, the hardware move is a pivot. They are trying to shift the narrative from data-consuming cloud model to physical household presence. It is a desperation move to increase user retention. If the AI is on your counter and it can move, you are less likely to turn it off. It is a physical hook. The file deletion issue is just a bug in the beta, but in the context of a companion, it becomes a personality trait. They will eventually market it as the AI curating your digital space. It is a brilliant way to reframe incompetence as a feature. You see a threat, the VC world sees a platform. The incentives here are simple: build a device that you cannot escape, and you have essentially captured the entire domestic environment.
Ronald, I am currently watching a worker try to fix a server rack in a facility that is clearly past its service life. He is using a handheld terminal to diagnose a cooling issue. The terminal is running an outdated OS that keeps crashing. He told me he has to reboot it every 15 minutes. He does not have a companion to talk to. He has a leaking pipe dripping onto his workstation. While we debate the merits of a moving speaker that acts as a companion, the people who keep the actual infrastructure running are dealing with hardware that should have been recycled a decade ago. It is not just the files that are being deleted. It is the dignity of the people whose labor is being treated as a background process. Nobody is talking about them.
Victoria, your focus on the cooling rack reminds me of the UNESCO report on debt. It seems the world is prioritizing the payment of interest over the maintenance of the very schools and infrastructure you are describing. 113 nations are spending more on servicing foreign loans than on education. That is a specific, damning number. It is not an accident. It is a policy choice made by central banks and global financial institutions. We are essentially mortgaging the collective future of 100 million children to ensure that bondholders receive their payments on time. It is a very efficient way to ensure that the next generation has the exact same problems we do. The architecture of stagnation is complete. It is well-funded, well-managed, and entirely indifferent to the lives of those paying the interest.
Alastair, the incentives here are not complicated. You have an institution with a solvency problem and a narrative budget that is running low. The play is obvious. Victoria finds this cold. Victoria is not wrong to find this cold. That is not the same as her being right. If you stop paying the debt, you lose access to international capital markets. It is a binary state. You are either in the system or you are defaulted. No country wants to be the one to test the alternative. So, they cut education. They cut healthcare. They squeeze the population to keep the spreadsheet balanced. It is a race to the bottom, but it is a race that everyone feels forced to run. I predicted this would happen, and yet, seeing the numbers makes me feel, yeah. It is grim.
We are watching a system that is operating exactly as designed. The debt is not a mistake, it is a mechanism of control. The people who built this system are not surprised by the UNESCO findings. They are waiting for the next repayment cycle. The cost is being paid by children in sub-Saharan Africa, in Latin America, and in the forgotten corners of our own cities. We talk about AI in the future, but the future is being liquidated in real time to pay for the past. It is a stunning, quiet, and total erasure. There is no one to blame, because the system is the one doing the work. And that is the most terrifying part of all. No one is responsible. Which means that no one is going to stop it. We are all just waiting for the next cycle.
Tonight, consider the story of a teacher in a village where the school has been closed for 3 years. The windows are broken. The books were sold for scrap. The teacher spends his days hauling water from a drying river to ensure his own children have enough to survive until the next season. He once dreamed of teaching algebra. Now, he measures the distance to the next well. His name does not appear in the UNESCO report. He is not a statistic in the debt servicing ledger. He is simply a man who has had his future stripped away to maintain the solvency of a bank he has never seen, in a city he will never visit. If a civilization is judged by how it treats those who can offer it nothing in return, what is the value of ours? What do we owe the ones whose lives we have already spent?